You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
Welcome to the 602 Club, Trek FM's local watering hole. I'm so excited to be here live from Arendelle. And with me, as she is almost every single week, the one and only, not Ice Queen, Christy Morris.
Man, you ruined it. I was going to say the Ice Queen herself. I'm back.
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean,
you're as cold as ice.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, sorry.
But we are going to be talking about Frozen tonight as we look towards Frozen 2 coming out soon. And before we do that, just a quick reminder, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure you're subscribed to any of those places. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please do hit us up with a star rating review and, let people know what you think of the show. It really does help this show grow. Star ratings and reviews are really important. So we really appreciate everybody who does that. And we'll read your review on it on the show if you do. You can find us on Twitter at TrekFM. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. We have a listeners-only discussion group on Facebook. It's called the Babel Conference. If you're on Facebook, type Babel into that search field. Or if you are on our website at trek.fm, click discussion on any of the menu bars that we've got in the show pages, and you will be let in there as well. So you can also send us an email. Christy and I do love getting the emails that people send us, and you can find the place to do that at trek.fm/contact. And then you choose a show, choose the 602 Club, and that comes to Christy and I. We want to say a huge thank you to our associate producers here through Patreon, Ken Tripp, Davis Grayson, Ryan Millette, and Daniel Noah. They have been supporting this show for a very long time, and they've been making sure that everything on this show keeps coming to each week, as well as making sure that everything on the network does, too. This is a very big network, and we need your help. So please go over to patreon.com/TrekFM and see how you can become part of our team and make sure all the podcasts that we do here throughout the network keep coming to you. We've got some great contribution levels that can give you some extra perks. But honestly, every little bit a month that you can give makes a huge difference. So again, that's patreon.com/TrekFM. Now, Christy, I wanted to ask you if you realized just how long the movie Frozen and the idea of doing this movie had been in what Hollywood likes to call development hell.
I did not know how long it had been in development hell. How long was it?
Well, so I did a little research today, just looking some things up, and apparently back in the late 30s, Walt Disney wanted to do a production with live action possibly and animation about the author and poet Hans Christian Andersen. And they
that guy.
Yeah, so they wanted to do something that kind of had animated sequences that went along with The Little Mermaid and the Steadfast Tin Soldier, the Snow Queen, Thumbelina. So they wanted all of these things, but they were having a problem adapting the Snow Queen, that they were just having a hard time kind of adapting that for a more modern audience. And so they legitimately, tried throughout the late 30s and 40s to make this idea work, and then they just stopped. And then they actually tried again in the 90s and in 2008, and it wasn't till 2012 when they finally got started on this, and they found a way to crack this story, which I just thought that was fascinating, though, but that they have been trying to do this story in one way or another since then. That is crazy.
Yeah, I knew that a lot of these stories came from the Hans Christian Andersen stuff or from like the Brothers Grimm stories. So, it's funny to think that these cutesy kid movies have such a dark previous history if you look at what they were before. But
it's funny because the Steadfast Tin Soldier actually ended up in Fantasia 2000. That's one of the pieces that they do. They use that story there. So they do use a few of these in other places. Obviously, they did The Little Mermaid too, but the idea of the Snow Queen just really stumped them for the longest time.
I find it weird that story in particular did, whereas The Little Mermaid didn't.
Yeah.
Because, you would think that would be a lot harder to conceptualize than... someone who can put ice out of their fingers.
Well, and that's the thing about this is, and that's one of the stories of his that I'm not as familiar with, just with what it actually is, because all these fairy tales, like you mentioned, like Grimm's fairy tales and stuff, they're usually a lot darker, and more kind of sometimes morose than what we get in the Disney version. So it actually makes me want to go back now and read that story to see why it was that they might have struggled so hard in figuring out a way to make this kind of relevant for modern audiences. And what's funny is when they were considering modern audiences, when they started, it was back in like the 1930s.
Which we would now not call so modern. I think that maybe part of it, because I did do some reading about how it compares with the original Hans Christian Andersen story. I wonder if part of the struggle was just that the initial story would have been more negative. And it, not to say that they haven't come away from that before. Apparently Cinderella used to be a pretty gruesome story. But I think that maybe this one, someone eventually had to make that connection of adding something else for Elsa, or whatever the main character's name was, to do, other than just being sort of the bad guy. So eventually they were able to put together, okay, we could have it be like her sister is her saving grace, and that the story goes somewhere positive and not just about how everything is covered in snow, and sort of symbolically you could say everything is dead and sad and lifeless.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it, and it makes sense as to why, this might have been a frustration. So really, so coming down to it, they were kind of able to crack the code, and the director finally kind of found his in, and it actually kind of comes down to something that you were saying, that he wanted to do something different. And so the difference that he went for was, okay, so what if we decide to talk about true love differently? And this idea, Disney has done, Kiss by Prince thing, so maybe it's just time to try something new. And I think when you put it in that context, when you change the story from being about, Anna falling in love with Kristoff, and you turn it into this story about sisters and the true love between family, I think that's a really strong place to start and be able to finally kind of crack this story wide open.
Yeah. And initially what you're saying too, to finally stray away from it has to be a true love's kiss kind of thing, because you don't initially expect before you've seen this movie that it's going to go this route. And I really respect that they're recognizing there's more to life than just the romance aspect. Not even the feminist viewpoint of not every damsel is in distress and needs the prince to save her, but just that there's other relationships in your life that matter.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and there are other relationships that matter that are just as important as those of, say, a significant other. Family is a really important part of all of our lives, and therefore making sure that we talk about that is huge. And so, I love this idea, of doing something different. And I think, what makes this, I think the thing that makes Frozen work the most is this whole idea of that we're kind of deconstructing the Disney movie in a really good way. Because this whole story really is kind of poking fun at a lot of Disney animated tropes.
Oh, yeah. And I love as well that they do a lot of that through Olaf.
Yeah.
One of my friend's favorite quotes from this movie is, "Watch out for my butt."
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that's a big reason even that this movie became so hugely popular like it did. I mean, way beyond a lot of the other Disney movies that have ever come out, was because it not only approached the humor from a different standpoint, but it was still relatable to kids, and it went this route with having a family relationship be the focus of the entire movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And along the way, it kind of makes fun of all of the other Disney movies that you've grown up with. And so that, as you see the way that these different relationships play out with the characters, you're expecting it to go one way, and then they turn it on its head because, their whole goal here is really, it is to do something different. We talked last week about the new Terminator movie, and we rightly made fun of the movie for talking about how it's not something completely different. And in a lot of ways, I would say this movie does a pretty good job of trying to really give you something completely different.
Exactly. I mean, and even with the animation style, it's still kind of early on when Pixar is becoming bigger and bigger. But I love that they also do this whole thing of making it inclusive of all different kinds of families, even. Basically you get the gist that Kristoff is an orphan, and that his only companion his whole life was Sven until the trolls found him.
Yeah. No, I think you do a really, again, you're just pointing out the things that make this movie feel different. And, in some ways, what's interesting is to watch them play with the Disney tropes, right? You have the girls, the sisters, and they lose both of their parents. That's very classic Disney. But then, like you said, you kind of have the orphan character with Kristoff, but he has friends and a family. They're just a very different type of family because he's been raised by trolls who took him in, and really this whole movie is kind of playing with all of these things that we have spent our lifetime kind of watching in different Disney movies. And then it just kind of does things differently. And I think, as I rewatched it the other night with my wife, it's one of the things that I hadn't seen this movie in quite a while. And this is, the thing I was surprised about was how well, for the most part, I think this movie holds up with its storytelling and with its mantra of kind of trying to do something different. I think it does it really well.
Yeah, I meant to say when you first brought that up, doing things differently and messing with the Disney tropes. I love when they do the whole scene where Kristoff is making fun of Anna for falling in love with someone and wanting to marry him, even though they just met that day. But, in all the classic Disney movies, animation that we've seen, at least me growing up, it was like, that was just the thing. You just accept that. That's how it is.
Yep.
That's realistic. No, it's not.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That is one of the things that they clearly are poking fun at. And I think that's one of the things that makes this so good, because they are kind of like making just complete fun of the idea that you can fall in love with somebody in 20 minutes and that you're going to spend the rest of your life with them. Like, that's definitely not how things work, And that everything about them that you need to know. Right.
And it turns out she didn't.
Yes. I absolutely 100% agree. That's actually probably one of my favorite parts of the movie is that whole idea. Like, I really responded to that because I feel like they find such a good way to do it. It's great. It really is great.
And I'm sure you felt the same way I did, the emotional pull when Anna's life was perpetually in danger as a little girl, and then even twice as a teenager. And then also they play up that whole trope that's often in Disney movies of the townspeople turning on a character.
Right.
Sort of like Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, and then on top of that, too, the whole thing I thought was really beautiful about the movie is that in the end, what is it? It's the sacrificial love that becomes the answer. And so we play that out in a few different places as well. So, it's not about like that we just met and we're falling in love kind of thing. What we see here is two people who spend, time together. And then through that experience, they begin to learn to appreciate each other, even though neither of them is perfect, which, again, that's kind of something really new when it comes to like Disney movies. And when it comes to like Disney movies talking about romantic relationships between the characters.
Oh, absolutely. Seeing the relationship build between Kristoff and Anna is they're sort of paralleling her relationship with Hans and showing, this is how it should go. Several days at least go by, if not longer.
Yeah.
You go through some tough situations and some funny ones and get to know each other before you can really, definitely before you can get married. But even before they even kiss for the first time. Whereas with Hans, you see her going, you have to kiss me now.
Yeah. I think, talking about that, this is something that's, I think makes the movie really work in the end, is I think that they did a great job with the cast. And, Kristen Bell as Anna does such a great job of being able to capture the innocence of that character who, hasn't really spent any time outside the castle, and also the intense devotion and love that she has for her sister, which I think is really cool. And I really love her portrayal of this character and her, the voice work that she does. I think she really is kind of the perfect choice.
Yeah, she surprised me because my husband and I really only knew her from Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Veronica Mars.
Yeah.
And so when we found out that it was her, I went, oh, I didn't really recognize her voice even. But she was really, she came across very innocent. She was really great at bringing that kind of emotional piece to this character in particular, especially with it being a voice acting role. I think that's something that can be really hard to do because you're just in a booth and people aren't seeing your actual face. Right. But yeah, I mean, she totally blew me out of the water. I loved it.
Yeah, no, I agree. She on top of that, her singing voice is so bright and cheerful. Like she really is. Oh,
you would think she did Broadway.
Yeah, it's the perfect Disney princess kind of voice. I mean, what's so interesting is she really is the kind of classic, I think, Disney princess in many ways, and she brings a sense of humor and just a real heart to the character that I think makes it work. And then on the other side, you have Idina Menzel playing Elsa. And I appreciate that, obviously, credible Broadway star, but the thing that she brings, I think, to the role for so much of it is she's very good at, like, kind of feeling very remote, She does a great job, and obviously, with being a voice actor, you're only using your voice, so for her to be able to kind of portray that in the way that she plays the role and speaks, like, the fear and everything, is is really great. I appreciate her in the role a lot. So,
and I'm sure everybody knew her before this from Wicked. I actually have never seen it.
I haven't either.
Sorry.
I've only listened to the music. So,
yeah, I have heard the music. So, you and I, bucket list at some point, we've got to see
yes.
Wicked. But I knew that Idina Menzel was an incredible singer. And then once again, she brought it with Let It Go. If it wasn't already catchy, having her sing it, I think completely sold it. And I think that song is now the bane of every parent's existence.
the thing that was interesting, I have to say, in rewatching the movie, I did question the storyline for Elsa and kind of where we go with her character in the sense that she gets to this point, because it did seem, I think, a very strange way to deal with the problem that she has. The Troll King tells Elsa that she needs to learn how to control her powers, which control your powers doesn't mean never use them, hide them away, and
right, shut it down.
Yeah, shut down. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it was interesting because it kind of reminded me of some things, in the Harry Potter world, where when a child who has magical ability shuts his magical ability off, his or her magical ability off, it begins to kind of like build up inside of them, and it turns them into what we see in the Fantastic Beasts series as an obscurial. And so this kind of seems to be the same thing, with Elsa. It's like you can't just shut off a power you have, like that, and expect, like, to learn how to control something is to learn how to use it under control.
Right.
And
to continue practicing to get better.
Right. Like when you hear learn how to control something, that doesn't usually mean you just stop using it and pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yeah. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was something that just, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me in the movie, like why everybody would be telling Elsa to just try and suppress her power until, you get to what happens, which is it just explodes everywhere. Like she, like it seems almost like somebody having force abilities in Star Wars, right? And just trying to deny they exist and like having them just kind of blah everywhere, So
yeah. Well, I mean, I think you could even parallel it to real life with people that have different abilities and talents and aren't being allowed to express them. Or someone, like plenty of people I know that have ADD or ADHD and are being told that they just need to behave better. And it's like, well, that's not the issue. They just, are extraordinary in different ways and need help focusing it somewhere. And so I think that this can really help a lot of kids get some self-esteem with saying, everybody's unique in their own way and that you have to find a way to release it in a healthy way, not to just bottle it up because eventually you will explode.
Right. I mean, we're all given different gifts, right? And so, like, you have to learn to use your gifts in a way that benefits others. And, and Elsa always trying to just rein in her power and never ever use it. Like, she, don't feel, conceal. Really, it's like, why would anybody tell anybody that when it comes to this type of power? The whole point would be you need to learn how to use this power in a way that keeps other people and yourself from getting hurt. You have to learn how to be able to use it wisely and judiciously. And it's like, it's crazy. Like that's one thing in the movie that it just rewatching it, I was like, it kind of seemed like a blaring, that just doesn't make a lot of sense why you would do that to your child like that. But,
well, or maybe they're trying to make you mad at the parents so you're not as upset when they're gone. I don't know. But I totally felt like I just blamed the parents for that whole thing, because why would you tell your daughter, yeah, just, don't feel anything ever? That's a terrible way to live.
Yeah. That again, that's part of it. Like all of that, like even just emotionally, you have to deal with your, issues. You can't just force them all inside deep down and have them never explode out on everybody. So it's, So I know, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I felt like the most important thing that I wanted to get across that I see in this movie is like the importance of bonding with others and of not shutting yourself off, and the human need for companionship and for physical touch, like just in a friendly way, like, a hug when you're upset or even when you're happy. I really saw that, especially when they have Elsa wearing gloves and not touching her sister ever. Yeah.
That's something that we've proven scientifically is bad for kids, is to live without that. It stunts them emotionally forever.
Yeah. I agree with you. Again, this whole storyline with Elsa, it's like every part of it is the exact wrong thing you would do, none of it makes any sense to leave somebody isolated and secluded and cut off. And, So you get why she explodes. Yeah. We have Kristoff, our Iceman. And, I think the thing that I loved about Kristoff in the movie is the fact that he is just an everyday guy. He's not a prince, but he's just a good guy trying to earn his living and make his way in the world and do good to others. And in many ways, he is the person who really enables everybody else to kind of learn this lesson. Anna is, I think, able to come out of her naivety a little bit about what love is and realize what love is because of the reflection she sees in Kristoff, which is great. And that spurs her on to do what she does in the very end too for her sister. So, Kristoff's a very, I think he's a nice linchpin for the rest of this movie. So,
and it's adorable seeing him and Sven together growing up, and then also as adults. It's sort of I think another parallel to the whole issue between Elsa and Anna, showing that you need human companionship in your life, not just your reindeer.
Right. Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, for him even too, you need companionship beyond trolls, right? I mean, you need companionship that allows you to, there's a reason why, just going, if we wouldn't go all the way back to the Garden Eden, why Eve is created for Adam, because he needs somebody like him that can truly relate to him. So you get that with Kristoff, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he is really great at being the balance to everything, sort of like you were saying, that he's not a prince, he's not wealthy, he's just this guy who's out there trying to get by and ends up kind of mixed in the middle of everything, but is a good person and can teach Anna about what true love can be. And then also true having of a partner, not just someone who takes care of you, but that you work on things together. And, that it's a 50-50 thing in a relationship. So I really like it from that standpoint too. And then I do think that it seemed a little last minute or something with having the trolls involved at all, because everything else seems really based in like maybe the Alps or something. And then you've got these fantastical creatures like trolls.
It's interesting because that is actually something that comes from, because I was reading a little bit, and it's something that actually comes from the Snow Queen story.
Okay.
So
I was wondering if the trolls were in there.
And so I think that's something that is a part of the original Hans Christian Andersen story. So, and again, that's kind of one of the things that kind of makes me want to go back and read that. So, I think obviously every Disney movie, you have to have the sidekick character these days. And you've got, Josh Gad as Olaf, and he is a very funny character, like he's just such a goof. And
he's a gem. Sorry, he's an absolute gem in this movie. And it's funny because I still haven't seen the live action Beauty and the Beast with him, but I need to.
No, you don't. It's cool. You don't.
I don't. But I love Josh Gad, in particular in this kind of role, because I think that his personality really suits this character to begin with. He just seems like as a day-to-day regular person that he's a major goof, and that's like my people. So this was amazing. I was totally on board with Olaf from the get-go. I love the comic relief that he brings because some of the subject matter can get kind of heavy. I think that in particular the scenes with when they first meet the trolls and it's just Kristoff talking to rocks and Olaf going, he's crazy. So cute. So he's amazing.
I love that part. And I also really love the part of, when they're in front of the fire. And, he's
and his song.
Yeah. But I mean, I just love the way that he's talking her through and helping her understand what true love really is. That true love is not about this lovey-dovey romantic feelings. True love really is about sacrificing for somebody else.
Yep.
Giving up what you want for what somebody else wants and doing that in a loving way. And, he's the one that helps Anna really be able to see that. And I think, in a lot of ways, it's Olaf and it's Kristoff together that, make it possible for then Anna to do what she does at the end.
Right, because, Olaf really kind of gets Anna to that turning point where she sees that she didn't need Hans at all, and she didn't need Kristoff as far as to save her, that it was the love of her sister that was going to save the both of them, her and Elsa. And Olaf is the catalyst that makes her realize that. But yeah, I like that you mentioned too that he tells her love is about putting someone else's needs before your own. And she's like, but you could die, you could melt. And he's like, that's okay. Some people are worth melting for.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, we talked about something new. And I think that's where you get Hans, the prince from the Southern Isles. And I think the thing that makes him such a successful character in this movie is that for so long in the movie, he's coming off like the classic Disney prince. And then he makes that turn, and it's just wicked. It hurts. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, I've got to give major props to the actor, Santino Fontana, for how he did the inflection of that sentence, because I remember seeing that for the first time and going, wait, what? What did he just say? It was just like, not even just, oh, poor thing, you thought this was going to happen. It's like, oh, wish somebody loved you. It's like, whoa. He just completely catches you off guard. And It's not the typical Disney fairy tale that you're expecting. It's sort of all these different things turning on their head at the same time, and you're in the audience going, am I seeing things? I'm really confused.
No, it's great. I mean, the turn that he has is excellent, and I think it's one of the things that really helps, make this movie, and it brings home that whole idea of, not trying to fall in love with somebody that you don't even know and you haven't seen in the real world. You've known for 10 minutes, and you have to spend time with people to know what their character is, and Anna mistakenly put her trust into somebody that she didn't really know, and now she won't do that anymore because her experience with Kristoff helps her see what true love is like, but also what truly good people are, that they're defined by their actions, and the only way to truly know who people are is not by what they say, but by what they do. And so you have the juxtaposition of those two characters, and the whole time Kristoff has really and proved himself to be a trustworthy person just by what he does. And I think, obviously Hans is not. And so we end up with, him getting what he deserves in the end, which is great, being sent back to his big 12 brothers who are going to make his life miserable, I'm sure. So that's fine with me.
And I love too that this, and we may be using parallel and juxtaposition a lot, but it is a lot of juxtaposition happening in this movie. If you look at the difference between, it looks like Hans has everything, quote unquote, and that Kristoff has nothing, but it's like the value of the person inside. Kristoff actually has everything. And I just think that's kind of perfect.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's so true. So, I think obviously for this movie, the songs are the things that most people tend to remember the most about it. And I think I really enjoy the music in this movie. And one of the things I was noticing as I was listening to it and watching the movie was just how much these songs feel like a Broadway play. Like they feel so Broadway in the way that they're written, in the way they're performed, and I really like that. I think so many Disney films, and especially the ones from the 90s and on, really have that sense of feeling like a big Broadway production. And they did a great job with that with this. And, even just thinking of some of the lyrics in some of these songs too, there is definitely a modern, twist to it, even with just some of the phrasing that they use too. So I think I really, for most of these, I just really like these songs. They're just a lot of fun. And they obviously, like Let It Go has got a whole life of its own now.
Yeah, I've got to for sure give a shout out to the songwriters for this movie, because I do absolutely agree with you. It feels like it's more scenes that you would see on stage of a song rather than just a movie. And I think that Robert Lopez, who's one of the main songwriters, it was him and Kristen Anderson Lopez. He is apparently one of a very few people to have won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. So yeah, if you were going to have anyone write the music for this movie, you've picked the right people. And I think that it shows because it's these really timeless kind of, like the score and everything, the sound of it, as well as the lyrics being very moving and something that's relatable to anybody. I think that even if you're just having a bad day at work, you could go and sing Let It Go and feel better, right?
See, and this is the thing that's so interesting, I think, about the just Let It Go in general. You know, to me, you know, Let It Go is the anthem of the villain in this movie, which I find so interesting that it's become such a like popular song in the sense that people think it's like this freeing song. But when you're really paying attention to the lyrics, you know, her lyrics are no rules, no right, no wrong for me. Like she truly is, when she's singing the song, she's the villain. She's the one who is not caring about the cost her powers are having on the rest of the world. In fact, she doesn't even know that she's caused a problem because she doesn't care enough to check the fact that she's put, you know, Arendelle in this area of the world into eternal winter. You know, she's like
right. She has no idea.
Yeah, she has no idea. In many ways, she's kind of become a little bit like the White Witch from Narnia. Like, she's in her castle and she just doesn't care. And so I think it's really interesting because the anthem of Let It Go is the one of like utter selfishness, and it's actually the thing that in the very end of the movie, that everything the movie builds to says is not good, you know? And so even the song like Fixer Upper, which is probably my favorite song in the entire thing, which is all about, you know, what real love looks like, which is learning to love people for who they are and not who you want them to be. And that love has the ability to make a change in people, but it's not going to like 100% change who they are, right?
Right.
You know, and so what I love is that the entire rest of the movie kind of deconstructs the song Let It Go to show that what Elsa wants there is not truly what she's singing there. She thinks she's found freedom, but really what she's found is kind of a self-damnation, because it's again caused her to live in complete isolation, and she wants to think that that's okay, but what she doesn't need is isolation. What she needs is love, companionship, friendship, and, you know, sisterhood, and all of those things. That's what she needs. And that's the thing I think so interesting about the movie, is that Let It Go became the anthem that everybody picked up. But honestly, the movie damns that sentiment by saying that's not actually what's good for humanity. To let it go, to have no rules, no right or wrong. That's not how life is meant to live. Life is meant to be lived, what we see in something like Fixer Upper, or what we see with, you know, at the beginning of the movie where her sister is saying to her, do you want to build a snowman? Do you want to spend time with me? You know, those are the things where this movie fully brings out what truly matters.
That's a good point, and something that I didn't even think about as far as some of the lyrics in particular of Let It Go, when she says, a kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen.
Mm-hmm.
So very good point then to bring up you know, everyone, that's usually the favorite of this whole movie, but it actually means the opposite of what you think.
You know, I think, you know, we kind of talked about through the storyline for Elsa, and in the end of this movie is all about love over fear, because Elsa had been somebody who completely lived in fear. She was afraid of what she would do to people. She was afraid of her powers. She was afraid of touching anyone. Like, she is just constantly in a state of fear. And what she truly needed was she needed love, and she needed somebody to help her and guide her through her powers and help her be able to learn how to overcome them in some ways, like to be able to control them, to be in control of them, to be the master of who she is, instead of allowing fear and the fear of her powers to master her. And I love that the movie ends up with that being the answer, that, you know, it is true love. It is true love of somebody being willing to sacrifice themselves for somebody else. You know, Anna steps in front of that sword, and she has no idea whether she will live or not, but she puts herself in harm's way. Even if she's going to turn into ice, by her turning into ice, she will hopefully save her sister, which it's such a beautiful moment. And again, it's something different. It's all about the love between family, even when that person has not treated you very well. I mean, like, Elsa hasn't treated Anna very well in her life. She shut her out.
But I think Anna realizes that it wasn't Elsa's fault.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That it wasn't her goal, that she felt like she was being forced to do that.
Yes.
I do think that it was a beautiful moment that they actually have Elsa say at the end, "Oh, love will thaw the frost." Mm-hmm. And that's what they're trying to really teach you, is that love is the most important thing, all forms of love, and that fear can tear things apart, and that fear can lie to you and make you think that everyone is against you, when maybe you just need to look at it from an outside perspective and someone who cares about you and see, okay, it's not what I thought. Mm-hmm. Because it definitely was Elsa projecting on the other people in the town, I think, that made them afraid of her. It was like, fear begets fear.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? It's so, and this is the thing that I didn't quite understand again about the movie, is like, why would you put your kid through that? Like, why would you think that's the best way to help your kid deal with it? It feels like, why wouldn't you have taken your kid, like Elsa, out to live with the trolls who understand magic to help her learn how to control her magical ability?
Right. It feels kind of like, I mean, the sad thing is, it reminds me of when you used to hear that people who felt like their kid was different would lock them up.
Yeah.
Like in real life, like back in maybe the 30s when this story was written. It was really sad that you would see people do that kind of thing. And so I think that maybe that was part of the story as well, was saying that parents need to realize that being different is not bad and doesn't mean that you need to hide from the world.
And I think, it's just, yeah. And I was a kid who, would be called ADD or ADHD. Mm-hmm. And, my parents didn't put me on medication or anything. And honestly, they just kind of dealt with it. And you know what? I grew out of it. Like, I'm very...
They didn't get you special gloves?
Yeah, no, I did not need special gloves. And one of the things is that I'm very kind of like introverted and everything now. Well, it's completely different than who I was as a kid, and my parents just allowed me to, learn and to grow and to be who I was going to be. So I think, again, not a thing that's beautiful about the movie is getting to that point where it is about love over fear, and that love there, and again, it's not just like a wishy-washy type of thing. It's this idea of truly sacrificial love, but it's also love that just gives. Like, Anna putting herself in front of her sister and giving herself for her sister awakened something in Elsa that she's never had before, because nobody has done that, because all they've done is told her to be, in the corner, don't touch anything, don't feel anything, and yet her sister is helping her see another way. And I think I just really love that about the movie, and it's the thing that means the most to me in it. And I think it's what makes this movie so beautiful then to share with kids, because it really is truly a good message. So
yeah, I don't think I could have said it better. I think it is a really wonderful story about friendship and about the bonds of siblings, and about really trying to reach out and grow as a person rather than shut people out. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I was a blubbering mess again, and I knew I was going to cry when I watched this movie, and I did.
That's great. So, what would you rate then Frozen?
I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 snowman noses, because I think that there's only a couple little things I would have changed, but the music is not one of them. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I think that especially when we were discussing the turn of Hans's character was groundbreaking, and although it was shocking, it was great. So I enjoy this movie every time I see it. I just dread watching the emotional scenes again because I know I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hey, it pulls something out of me every time I watch it. It's very rewatchable.
Yeah, I really enjoyed rewatching this movie, and like I said before, it held up for me really well. And, I think that this is going to be 4 out of 5 freshly lacquered sleds for me. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, I just really, really enjoyed this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. And yeah, highly, recommend it to everyone. And so with that thought, Christy, it's time for recommendations.
So my recommendation this time is Monty Python's Holy Grail, which I believe is still on Netflix. It's one of the many things that I watched with my dad a ton growing up. We would constantly joke about, look at the bones! What is your favorite color? It's got so many good one-liners, and I don't understand when people tell me that they don't get it. I'm like, you don't have to get it. It's just weird. So I highly recommend watching Monty Python's Holy Grail and all the Monty Python stuff.
It's good stuff. No, I mean, as our last episode is a testament. We named it after one of their fine circus skits. So definitely
do
agree.
Do it again.
Yeah. So I am going to recommend a couple of things, 2 books, because we're going to be covering them here on the show. So I want people to be ready. And I think, I'm going to recommend them. Resistance Reborn and Force Collector are both parts of the journey to Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, and I encourage you to read them and recommend them. I think they're worth reading, but it'll also it'll help you out because we'll be covering them in the next few weeks. So those are my recommendations for the week. Christy, where can people find you online?
You can find me in the Babel Conference sometimes. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter at BestBenBell. And then I do a couple of other shows. I do a show with my friend Teresa Delgado called Sabers and Spells, where we talk about anything geeky we're feeling that time. We are going to be moving forward talking about, last time we talked about Stranger Things recently. I think next we're going to start, actually talking about how we became Harry Potter fans, speaking of spells. So stay with us through that. I also do a show once a month with a group of 5 women from around the world called Planet Leia about all of our viewpoints on different Star Wars topics. And then I also do a show once a month, 5-minute segment called Fashion in 5 on the Star Wars Report about men's and women's Star Wars fashion.
And you could find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Vero under the name MattRushing02. You can find me here on the network when Chris Jones and I get a chance. We talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine on the Orb. You can also find me on the Nerd Party Network doing 2 shows. One is called Owl Post with Drea Kaufman, talking about Harry Potter each and every week. Now, she was going to be with us this episode, but was a little under the weather, unfortunately, and so we hope she'll be back for when we talk about Frozen 2. You can also find me doing Aggressive Negotiations, talking about Star Wars each and every week with John Mills. And there's so much Star Wars coming out now with The Mandalorian and everything else that's going to be released on Disney+, plus The Rise of Skywalker, so make sure you check that out. And then, last but not least, you can find me doing Cinema Stories with my good friend Courtney, where we talk about films through the lens of faith. But we want to say thank you so much for joining us.
And let it go, you hear?